Life, in all of its forms and splendor, was on the verge of extinction. If it wasn't for this man, I wouldn't be here today. Almost all of us owe our lives to Vasily Arkhipov, a Soviet Navy officer who made a submarine decision that could have prevented nuclear World War III. During the Cold War in 1962, the United States and the Soviet Union had sufficient weapons to destroy the entire world. The Cuban Missile Crisis erupted in October of 1962. Cuba's request to deploy missiles on the island was granted by Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev. Following the deployment of missiles capable of striking Moscow by the US in Italy and Turkey, Cuba sought protection because, during the Bay of Pigs invasion, Cuban exiles opposed to Fidel Castro's regime attempted to overthrow him with the help of the US government. President John F. Kennedy imposed a blockade on Cuba after spy planes discovered Soviet missile bases on the island. A Soviet submarine was discovered hiding in the Caribbean on October 27 by American forces. 3 other Soviet submarines and the B-59 were on a top-secret mission to Cuba. To get the submarine to surface, the Americans used depth charges. These were low-explosive hand grenades that weren't meant to kill anyone. However, the crew mistook this for a hostile act. They hadn't heard from Moscow in days, and the submarine was too deep underwater to pick up any radio traffic, so they didn't know if war had started. The submarine was equipped with a nuclear torpedo, which the Americans were unaware of. Valentin Savitsky, the captain, was convinced that his crew was about to be blown apart. Later, the exhausted captain's emotional outburst was recounted by an intelligence officer aboard the submarine. "We're about to demolish them. We'll die, but we'll sink them all. We're not going to be the fleet's laughingstock." The nuke was to be assembled for launch, according to Savitsky's orders. The nuke had the power of the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. If the crew felt it was necessary, Moscow had already given them permission to fire the torpedo. If it had been launched and hit one of the many US ships in the area, it would almost certainly have set off a chain reaction that would have resulted in full-fledged nuclear war. That would have wreaked havoc on the world and resulted in untold numbers of deaths. It did not, however, take place. Arkhipov's fault. He had been 34 years old for quite some time. His wife described him as a quiet, reserved individual. On that covert mission, Arkhipov was in charge of 3 submarines. Captain Savitsky needed the approval of 2 others before launching the torpedo. His deputy political officer, Ivan Maslenikov, and Arkhipov, who was on the same rank as Savitsky. The launch was approved by Maslenikov. "No," says Arkhipov. He was adamant about not allowing the strike to take place. Arkhipov appears to have tried to calm the captain down and persuade him to refrain from taking any rash actions. According to later interviews, when the inside of the submarine was boiling, he kept his cool. Temperatures soared to 50 degrees Celsius. Captain Savitsky was persuaded by Arkhipov that they were not in danger because the depth charges appeared to be warning shots because they were dropped left and right but always off target. President Kennedy was concerned that the Russians would misinterpret the depth charges as an attack while this was taking place. The torpedo was never fired in the end. The captain chose to surface because the Americans failed to inspect the submarine. They were unaware that it was equipped with a nuclear weapon. The submarine arrived safely at its destination. The United States would not learn of the torpedo until 40 years later, when the former adversaries met for the first time at a reunion and shared the story. Later, Robert McNamara, the Kennedy administration's Secretary of Defense, said that the act benefited mankind greatly. Elena, his daughter, claimed that her father acted as if he understood the potential for radiation disasters. In 1961, Arkhipov was exposed to radiation as a result of an accident aboard a nuclear submarine. He stayed with the Russian Navy after the Cuban Missile Crisis and was eventually promoted to vice admiral. In 1998, he died of kidney cancer, which was most likely caused by radiation. He was 72 years old at the time. So, when you look around the world in all of its forms and splendor, remember that we would not be here today if it weren't for a naval officer who tried to calm a captain down despite depth charges, extreme heat, stress, and isolation.